Welcome to Trending. Today we have a truly disturbing story and possibly a righteous outcome. On October 25th, 1994, Susan Smith from South Carolina reported to police that she had been the victim of a carjacking by a black man while driving her 1990 Mazda Protégé sedan with her son still in the back seat. For 9 days she made dramatic pleas on national television for their safe return. Then the truth unravelled, dark and sinister. There was no carjacking. Susan Smith had strapped her sons, 3-year-old Michael and 1-year-old Alex, into their car seats. She released the brake. The car with her babies inside rolled into the dark waters of John D. Long Lake. Here's an old clip when her car was recovered.
Thanks.
Area at the top. In the front.
She murdered her own children. Her motive? A twisted love affair. The man she desired claimed he couldn't handle the baggage of another man's children, so Susan Smith chose him, discarding her sons like yesterday's news. The nation gasped in collective horror. How could a mother commit such a heinous act? The trial was a media frenzy. Cameras captured every tear, every whispered word. Susan Smith's defense team attempted to portray her as mentally unstable, a victim herself. They pointed to a troubled childhood, a history of depression. The prosecution painted a different picture. They presented a cold, calculating woman who used her beauty and charm to manipulate those around her. Ultimately, the jury sided with the prosecution. Susan Smith was found guilty on 2 counts of murder. She was sentenced to life in prison. The judge, her voice heavy with emotion, told Smith that while she believed in forgiveness, she also believed in accountability. He sentenced her to serve a minimum of 30 years before she could be considered for parole. For 3 decades, Susan Smith lived with the consequences of her actions. Life behind bars is a harsh reality, even for a former homecoming queen. Inside the walls of Leith Correctional Institution, Susan Smith was just another inmate. She worked in the prison library, a silent penance for silencing her children's voices forever. As the year 2024 approached, so did Susan Smith's first parole hearing. The hearing was held on November 20th, 2024. Media outlets from around the globe descended upon the small town of Columbia, South Carolina. Everyone wanted to know, would Susan Smith be granted parole? Would she be allowed to walk free after 30 years? The parole board listened intently as Susan Smith, and this is how it went.
That if we grant you parole, that you're going to go out and follow the rules and the laws of society if you do not follow the rules within the institution.
Well, this last infraction, was trusted the wrong person. This lady contacted me and I trusted her. I thought she was going to do a documentary on mental health, and I really am not guilty of what they charged me with, and I have filed an appeal on that charge. As far as your question, I've never been in trouble before, and the things that I have been found guilty of in here have been just stupidity. I know I made a lot of mistakes in here, and I have learned from them. And before this last infraction, it had been 10 years, because I grew up and I knew that I needed to stop making dumb decisions, and I did. I knew it was time to grow up and do the right thing. I just made a lot of dumb choices and mistakes in here. So I know I've learned from those mistakes.
What do you feel is the most important thing that you've learned? What do you think is the most important thing that you have learned while you have been incarcerated?
That people are important, that that forgiveness and love, that family is important, and that decisions we make not just affect us, they affect the people that we love. And not to take things or people for granted.
David Smith, the father of Michael and Alex, addressed the board next.
Ultimately, to me, that's only 15 years per child. Her own children. It's just not enough.
After hours of testimony and deliberation, the parole board reached a decision. Susan Smith's request for parole was denied. She will not be eligible for parole again for another 2 years. This is how it went.
Thank you. As a reminder, Mrs. Mira did recuse herself. Ms. Susan Smith is denied parole. The vote is unanimous. Numbers 1 and 6. Thank you.
For now, Susan Smith remains behind bars, her freedom a distant dream, and the world continues to grapple with the question: can a mother who murders her own children ever truly be rehabilitated?